Welcome. We're so glad that you're here this evening. We welcome all of our guests. We're delighted to have you here. I'm Charles Walton, the pastor, and delighted to see so many of you. This is a wonderful day for us. This is the third in our series of summer concerts that we've enjoyed, and we have really enjoyed, and with a great deal of anticipation, not only the concerts that we've had in our gymnasium while we were not in this building, but this one especially. And of course, this is a very special night for us, and the day has been a glorious one here at First Baptist Church. We will not receive an offering tonight. I know that is very, I know some of you are disappointed in that, but some of our members have asked if we brought our regular church offering when we weren't here this morning, to whom do we give it? No, not me. One of our ushers will be glad to receive your offering if you have your gift, in Gathering Day check for the sanctuary, any of those kinds of things. And already we've had a couple of those. Just give it to one of the ushers, Bob Swanner or some of those guys. They'll take care of it. They can handle that. It's a real joy to be in the Lord's house tonight. And before I go any further, I'd like to have a word of prayer with you. Father, thank you for this day of worship and for the honor that we have to come before you with family and friends and kindred spirits to worship you. And thank you for our special guests tonight. We ask your blessings upon those who've come to hear and to worship and those who will lead us. And Father, thank you especially that we can feel this kindred spirit across denominational lines and in every way possible, that as we lift up Christ our Savior, in whose name we pray. Amen. Without further ado tonight, let me welcome Vince Parks from Church Organs of Houston, with whom we've worked and had a very satisfactory relationship, and with them and with the Schaefer family for our new organ. Vince, you can welcome him if you'd like.
Thank you. Wow. Welcome. On behalf of all of us at Allen Organ Company in Allentown, Pennsylvania, and Church Organs of Houston, thank you for coming. I have just a few people that I need to thank before we jump right into tonight's program. First of all, Mr. Charles Wilson. Mr. Wilson, I think, is back in that general area. Mr. Wilson is with Lancaster and Wilson Architects, the architect who supervised and designed the renovation of this worship space. It was a pleasure working with his firm. Architects have a lot to do with what kind of job we can do when they do a worship space, and the requirements that we have for the organ, he was able to graciously accommodate. It was very, very, very much a pleasure to work with Lancaster and Wilson. Also, Alliance Construction, the contractor on this project, and the Williams Company that did the lighting and sound. All of those folks made our life lots easier, and we appreciate that. Mr. Rix Tillman, the minister of music here at First Church of Conroe, shepherded this organ project for well over a year. When this congregation was talking about renovating the building and trying to decide what to do about an Alling pipe organ, Rix grabbed the lead and got a good committee together that investigated various options and alternatives, and we're so glad that they chose a new Allen organ. Lastly, a special thanks to Mr. and Mrs. Schaefer. Their tremendous generosity provided not only the instrument you're going to hear tonight, but its little sister that's over in the chapel, which does an equally fine job in that space. I want to tell you just a brief story about the Schaefers, because I think this says a lot about them. In the 12 years that I've been associated with Allen Organ Company, I have never dealt with a donor that gave 2 instruments to a church, and then on the day that we brought the console out to the church, showed up to help the organ company install it. We appreciate it. It is our pleasure to help the First Church of Conroe with this evening's presentation. Carlo Curley has been called the Pavarotti of the organ. That's probably because, ladies and gentlemen, he takes this and makes it sing. Personally, I've known Carlo for 12 years now. He dedicated the organ at my home church, and I can tell you this. Carlo Curley is the best thing that's happened to the organ since electricity. Ladies and gentlemen, how about a warm Texas welcome for Carlo Curley.
much indeed, ladies and gentlemen, and good evening to you. The very first piece I played was the very lyrical Welsh folk tune, All Through the Night. La la lum dum da 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 dum, all through the night. I knew you were a musical crowd when I saw you coming in. I could tell, you know, I could just see it on you when you came in. There you are. It's my own arrangement for the organ, that and the two delicate stanzas, delicate verses, I should say. And that was immediately followed by Bach's Sinfonia from Cantata number 29, blessed with a wonderfully heady title, We Thank Thee, God. And it's probably, ladies and gentlemen, one of the best advertisements for classic music ever penned to the manuscript page. I've planned what I trust will be an every person repertoire this evening to inaugurate your new wonderful instrument. It's blessed with a wealth of colors. And I'm going to do my best to show as many of them as possible in the hour and a half or hour and 45 minutes that we're together here. The following piece is by George Frederick Handel, the composer of the Messiah. This is the Largo from Xerxes. Now, in the opera Xerxes, the countertenor is singing to a tree, thanking the tree for providing him with shade. It's amazing what they did back then when they didn't have 200 channels of cable television, isn't it? You know, simple things blossomed, so to speak. You know, it's amazing. In any case, I first heard this piece not in its proper original format, as it were, but actually sung in a very moving setting when I was about 7 or 8 years old by the Mormon Tabernacle Choir on their CBS Sunday broadcast. And I'll never forget it. And the tune stayed with me until I actually went into the organ world as a performer, and then I decided I would make a transcription for it. So I hope you'll enjoy that. If we could go directly from the Largo from Xerxes directly into the following piece without any pause, I would appreciate that in advance, because it's another Largo, but a very different kettle of fish, so to speak. This is the Largo Allegro aria and two variations by the blind English violinist Mr. Michael Festing, a contemporary of Handel. Now, in this piece, it's arranged for the organ by George Thalben Ball, a very distinguished organist in Britain and a teacher of mine for many years. And in this piece, we're going to go beauty hunting using the little white buttons and the chrome toe controls you see there on the organ 747 mini flight deck, as it were. I set these various stops up this afternoon and before you arrived and during rehearsal, and it makes a wonderful sound, particularly though I would mention the bird that you see sitting, the bird cage that you see sitting on the console. That is not the property of the First Baptist Church. I have dragged that here from afar. Thank you very much. It travels with me in a little tote bag on the plane, because many old pipe organs had a stop called a nachtingale, or a cuckoo. Now, I cannot imagine in an ecclesiastical sense what possibly these birds could add to the worship experience, except if the homily or the sermon by the pastor or the priest was perhaps a little bit long and excessive. The organist would fire off the birds for just a minute, and that was the signal just to let the preacher know that everybody's roast was getting dry in the oven, home. So, right. That's just my guess. I could be wrong, of course, In any case, but listen please, because this is light and as delicate as a string quartet, particularly in the little movement where these birds sing. Immediately following the little Largo piece by Festing, I'll play for you a request piece here, which is the great Toccata and Fugue in D minor. When you inaugurate an organ, ladies and gentlemen, you come and test the lungs of the instrument. What I love about the king of instruments, as Mozart so rightly called the organ, is not only can it whisper, but it can proclaim, as they say in England, jolly well. And I think here at First Baptist, you have an instrument which can whisper inaudibly, but when you put your foot down and get the pedal to the metal, you really know that it can fly, if you know what I mean. This will be witnessed certainly in Bach's Toccata and Fugue in D minor. And it speaks volumes about this particular instrument built by the Allen Organ Company, because in the fugue, you can listen for all the clean lines. You'll be able to hear the soprano, alto, tenor, and bass, just like a fine choir, all equally clearly, which is why the Allen is my electronic instrument of choice these days, which is fine. folks in Conroe were a bit rowdy, you know. Gosh, let me finish the piece, will you? Jeez. Thought something had gone off with the organ, you know. I thought, jeez. It's 10-year warranty, you know. I couldn't have broken it already. It's the first day it's been used. Well, I don't know. If it survives me, ladies and gentlemen, I'll tell you something. You know, it'll last for quite a long while. I have a feeling. Don't tell anybody. It's a grand piece, that it really is, and it sounds very fine here indeed. The following is a piece entitled Interlude in C by Sir Walford Davis, who was Master of the King's Music and also organist at London's Temple Church for many years. Sir Walford knew more about training boys' voices, boys and men's voices in the great English choral tradition than anyone else, really. His reputation was absolutely flawless and beautiful, and just his writing for all of the great anthems and of the settings of the service are very revered and well known. This melody is one of those that could melt stone. The piece was originally written in piano duet for 2 pianos and arranged for the organ by George Thalben Ball, a gentleman I mentioned earlier who did the arrangement of the festing work. Let me just try and sing the little melody for you. Organists are really frustrated singers. I want you to know that before I start here, so don't expect too much from this instrument here when it starts to sing. Lum da 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 la la da 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 dum, la da dum da da dum lum. That little bit where it fell from the C to the G, that's not in the score, by the way, but I just like to add that. This minister of music here works, 40 hours a week to try and get you folks in the choir not to do that. So don't, there you go. In any case, we'll use the organ in a very orchestral way now, letting it start very quietly. You'll hear us stop when I go to the top keyboard. Listen for the strings, very luscious. I hate to use the word sensuous strings. May I use those words? It's in the Bible, isn't it? Sensuous, yes. Okay, sensuous strings. You have sensuous strings. That's the end of it. No more discussion. I may not be playing the second half here. I may be asked to leave town, In any case, accompanying those strings, you'll hear in the middle a little stop called a vox humana, a voix humaine, which imitates a human voice. It's a pipe organ stop, very old, many hundreds of years. But in this century, Mr. Skinner and many of the great pipe organ builders made it a very soft, very sweet stop. The organ builds up and builds up and builds up, a great crescendo in the middle, a great decrescendo, which was so typical of Walford Davis's work. Really works a treat, that. The piece which we'll close the first half with, ladies and gentlemen, I'll come back to tell you about in just a moment. Give me a second to set me stops up, and I'll play for you Walford Davis' Interlude in C. Listen for the vox humana, and at the end, the little celesta, which I'll use going up the second keyboard, the great organ. Here we go. The closing work in our first half this evening is by George Frederick Handel. This is his Concerto Number 4 in F major. It's entitled Allegro. Allegro, just the first movement. Allegro, which means pretty darn fast. It's a real toe tapper, this, ladies and gentlemen. If there are seat belts in these pews, I would recommend that you consider engaging them just about now, because this is one of those kind of pieces that a friend of mine, and certainly a man you knew as the greatest organist probably in this country's history, Dr. Virgil Fox, used to say, "Chicken, it's a barn burner," and I believe him. Never seen a barn burn, but if it did, this would be great accompanimental music to it, I'm quite sure. In any case, the theme is wonderful. Da-dum bum bum ba-dum bum bum ba-da-dum da-da-dum da-dum bum bum. A real communicator sort of a piece. I think it joins the Sinfonia, my signature tune with which I open this evening's program, as being one of the 2 best advertisements for good music really ever put down on the manuscript sheet. Now think, when I play this piece for you, ladies and gentlemen, I must undertake to perform 3 distinct roles. Firstly, I must be the organist. That's why I was brought here to inaugurate the organ. That's a fair comment. The second role is as important as the first. Really, I must be the orchestral players, because it's written for organ and orchestra. 20, 40, 60, 100 players. It all depends upon your budget, of course, and your out view on how the music should be performed. I hear it in a very big strings romantic tradition, as you could well expect. Now, the third role is just as important as the other 2, perhaps the most important. I must be the conductor of this happy band of musicians, organist and string players and woodwind players, etc., and hopefully keep them all conflated together in a very happy mixture, which will be pleasing to the ear. Well, let me tell you that as we approach the end of this, quote, barn burner, there's a little piece of the music of this piece, a piece of this piece, I suppose I can say that, called a cadenza. And that is where I'm allowed to improvise, to actually play in the style generally of Handel for 30 or 40 bars, 20 or 30 bars, it all depends. The conductor places his baton down on the music stand, and all the instrumentalists have a wee break, as they would say in Scotland, and I go a bit bananas there, yes? Well, this evening I'm not going to do a cadenza in the style of Handel. I'm going to drink from the cup ever so slightly of Dave Brubeck, the jazz musician. You certainly know his name. See, there you go. Handel and Brubeck. Yes, there you are. You heard it here first, let me tell you. In any case, suffice it to say that at the end of the cadenza, as the end of the cadenza approaches, these size 12s are going to start playing a little dance of their own on this pedal board, right? And these size 12s are going to start and go smoking up and down the pedal clavier. And as I said earlier, if this particular piece doesn't void the warranty on your new Allen organ, nothing will. Believe me. So there you are. Handel, Concerto Number 4 in F. We'll have a break immediately after this piece. I'll just have a quick word with you before that. I'd like to meet as many of you as possible before you go off into the night after a while. But do stay for the second half, because it's a very varied second half. The Lost Chord by Arthur Sullivan, a little Saint-Saëns, a little surprise to open the second half, which I think would very much be to your liking. And then I think at the end of this get-together this evening, to mark the opening of the organ, we're going to sing together a great hymn, if that's all right, and it's one of my favorites. So have a good gargle and a good glass of water during the intermission, and get ready, because if you don't do as well as I'm sure you can do, we'll just start over and rehearse and be here all night. So there you go. Handel, Concerto Number 4 in F, entitled Allegro. Here we go. think I'd be a tiny man, wouldn't you, really, working in all this heat. I don't know what it is. Anyway, one of your church members has come up to me and said that the next time I play at Westminster Abbey, I'm going to have this in my right hand. I'll show him. I'm a Tar Heel, but I can borrow from Texas. I don't care. You know. He said, that's what we use down here when we're hot, he said, you know, out on the farm. So, whew. Not that old Yankee handkerchief. I'm going to throw that one away. Anyway, are we all here? God bless you all. You all look so wonderful. Okay, and the lights are starting to go down. Prices are going up. Here we go. There you go. Okay. It's a rather short half, but a very succinct half. It's right to the point. The very first piece that I'm going to ask the organ to play for you, and that is a very important line there, is the London Derriere, arranged for the organ by J. Stuart Archer, the traditional Irish folk tune. This instrument and all Allen organs, all new Allen instruments, are equipped with something called a performance recorder, and I think it's a terrific device because for once, the organist can come in on a Saturday afternoon or whenever he or she practices. They can play through their hymn arrangements, their prelude, their postlude, their offertory, everything they use to create an ambience for worship, which is the principal reason that this instrument is here in this sanctuary. And they can put it into the performance recorder and go out into the gallery, the balcony, downstairs, every spot in this room, and they can go and judge their own performance because the organ will play back verbatim what you've put into the performance recorder. I mean, it's just the miracle of digital electronics in the 21st century. Probably very simple for all those of you who have PCs and are on the internet and World Wide Web and email and all that sort of thing. But, you know, for an organist, it's very special to be able to push a button and hear the balance for yourself. No longer do organists have to ask the janitor who's mopping, you know, are the chimes too loud? Or, you know, is that trumpet, is the accompaniment loud enough, or is there too much pedal? And of course, he's going to say yes to everything. Oh, that's fine, wonderful, that's fine. And of course, comes the Sunday morning, you can't hear the chimes, and the trumpet's dead, and you know what I mean? So now you can judge it for yourself. Let me ask the instrument to play the London Derriere for you, which I sequenced this afternoon before you arrived. And it'd be nice for me to hear with the building absolutely crammed full of people, which is wonderful. I can now go up to the gallery and walk around and see exactly how it sounds with the audience in. So give me just a second to prepare, and this little arrangement, which I hope you'll enjoy. this beautiful building. Gosh, I went all the way upstairs, right at the top of the gallery there. It's very present. It's wonderful, even under the balcony, which is unusual because organs usually die a death on the back row and there's a gallery coming out over, but it's very well voiced, this, and very well regulated. Thanks to Vince Parks for doing such a fine job here. Let me just introduce the other pieces here very quickly. The Fantasy in F minor by Mozart is a gamut piece. It shows the king of instruments from triple pianissimo to triple fortissimo and lots of wonderful colors and sheens in between. This piece was commissioned of a very wealthy Viennese count, Count Diem, who owned a waxworks museum in the heart of beautiful Vienna. And there were many clocks in his waxwork and musical museum, about yay high. And inside, if you were to open up the back and have a look, there were several sets of gedecked organ flute pipes, very lightly voiced, very delicately voiced, beautiful sounds. And in any case, the leading composers of the day were commissioned by Count Diem to conceive pieces for these little clocks to play. Instead of chiming the hour, a tune would play, which is really rather nice, if you can imagine. So I hear the piece in a big strings tradition and play it accordingly, very colorful, particularly the middle part of the sandwich, as it were, the two outer layers being very bravura, very orchestral. The middle section is some of the most gorgeous writing from that wonderful classic school of composition. The Lost Chord by Sir Arthur Sullivan, seated one day at the organ. I was weary and ill at ease, while my fingers wandered idly o'er the noisy keys. And then, I'll stop there because the words go on. I knew not what I was doing, or, and I didn't know what I was playing. Good gracious me. So if I start that sort of thing, you'll get suspicious, I'm sure. But it translates beautifully to the organ. It works very well. I'm going to save the introduction of the last piece until then. Let me just play these two pieces for you, please. The Great Fantasy by Mozart, and then directly into The Lost Chord by Arthur Sullivan. Here we go. You know the name John Philip Sousa, I'm quite sure. Well, let me tell you that one of his most fabulous toe-tapping marches is the Liberty Bell. Yeah, and I learned it back in 1979 when I played at St. Paul's Cathedral in London for the first time in recital over what they call their August Bank Holiday Monday, which is just at the end of the month. And we had a very fine crowd there, a couple of thousand odd people. I was quite chuffed by that and thrilled. In any case, the night before, the dean and the chapter and quite a few of the musicians in the cathedral and some of the choir came along. And at a reception, the dean met me and shook me by the hand and said, "Oh, Mr. Curley, you know, we see so many Americans here at St. Paul's." You know, and it was all said in a not altogether friendly way. You know, it's like there was a slight odor in the room, you know, and, you know, all those Americans, you know. So I checked, I thought, you know, very expensive cologne. I was well dressed. I thought, gosh, okay. Then he said he felt he had to say something to me because the fabric of the building was going to be enhanced probably by one stones being restored by the money they raised from the charity concert. But in any case, he said to me, to keep the conversation alive, he said, "Oh, is there a possibility, Mr. Curley, that if you happen to be asked by the audience to play an extra number," he said, "perhaps you could, how shall we say, would you consider doing something American?" He said. And I thought, baby, I've got you right where I want you. I gave him enough rope. You know how high the steeple, the dome is? Swing low, Mr. Dean. In any case, I had just learned the Liberty Bell March. I hadn't played it publicly at all at that time. So I rehearsed late into the night and learned that you could get the maximum heart attack effect by starting on the great royal trumpets, which are installed over the great west doors on a 15 or 20 inch wind pressure, which parts hair at 50 or 100 paces. So I played Reger, César Franck, big Grand Pièce Symphonique of Franck, big pieces, Passacaglia, Bach. It was a very hefty program, very sort of a macho program in that way. And I loved it. It went well. Touch wood, I think it was all right. Suffice it to say, at the end, the crowd wanted an extra number, as the dean had called it, yes. So I went like this, pointed to the big console where they could see me up on the little gallery on the right side. Yes, yes, encore, encore. I thought, here we go. So I jumped into the cockpit there and pushed my general piston, the little white button, and it says right over Manual 5, Royal Trumpets. So I pulled out the 8 and 4, and in the dome is a Marche Militaire, which is actually a Wurlitzer post horn where the resonators are of spun brass. A friend of mine says it sounds like golden rain coming out of the dome. We hope we never see rain coming out of the dome, but that's another thing. So I then began to play rum ba bum ba bum ba bum ba 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 bum ba bum wham da dum ba da 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 dum ba bum ba bum. And let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, there were not enough stretchers and ambulances in the city of London to take the corpses of the clergy away. Sorry, Pastor, I had to get it in. Oh, he would not speak to me afterwards. I was greeting people for hours, and he finally just walked past. Bye. Bless him. In any case, I'd like to play that piece now. Right? Is that all right? Now, you have a Ladies and gentlemen, they've done such a wonderful job of restoring this beautiful old building. It's been done so tastefully, and the money's been well spent. I've been up and down. I've been outside. I've looked. I see the inside of the facility, the organ. It all fits. It all matches up together like a seamless glove. The people that did the work are to be commended at the highest level. Now, of course, St. Paul's Cathedral is another kettle of fish entirely, but this is your St. Paul's Cathedral. And so you know, you have on the back wall what is called a festival trumpet. I'm not going to have a royal trumpet here at First Baptist, but it's festival, and it is festive, and it does part hair at 50 paces. So for those of you without life insurance in the balcony, I hope you're ready. So when I give you the high sign, can I beg you to help me out with this piece? It really is the sort of piece that demands you clap along, but please do not begin to clap in rhythm until I give you the high sign, which is a gigantic woo, a great whoop, yeah? It is Sunday evening after all, so I'm sure it's allowed here on the platform. So anyway, there's 2 rules if you're going to clap along with me, please. And I say this to audiences everywhere. Do not, rule number 1, do not begin until I give you the high sign. Very important, right? Second rule, more important than the first. Once you start to put your hands together, when I ask you to, don't rush me. Don't you love it when they sit down and you don't tell them to? You've got to work on that, preacher. I'm concerned. No. Hymn books into your hands. Are they there? Yep. Stand you up. Lights up, please. Monsignor in the gallery there with his hands on the controls. Here they come. Just like the Fox Theater. There it goes. All right. Indeed. Joyful, joyful, we adore thee. Is it number one or number two? Oh, it is one. It has to be one. I was raised in a Methodist church until it's number one, page one. That's right. I was raised in a Methodist church in this little town in North Carolina where I was born 43 years ago. And I was a Methodist until the First Baptist church in this little town when I was 7.5, bought a Moeller pipe organ, right? And overnight I changed my allegiance. Well, I didn't know, did I? You know. Went from an Edwardian pile that didn't work very well to at least an organ that played every note. You know, it worked. And it was something else. Didn't stay there long, because then the Episcopalians got a new organ. So with a Methodist mother and a Catholic father, I didn't know where I was going. You know, I was lost. In any case, it's good to be back in the Baptist church, because I know for a fact that Baptists, if challenged, can sing heartily. Right? Breath. When an organ's reservoirs fill up with air, they must be big lungs to be able to make a big sound, a sustained, long sound. Your instrument here has big lungs, although it's 21st century. Digital lungs, indeed. Right, how many verses? 4? Right? Or 3, 4, right? Could I ask everyone, please, to sing parts, S-A-T-B, on the first verse, right? I would ask on the second verse, please, for the ladies to sing unison, please, right? Men, you just be quiet and moderate your transports. We'll get around to you in a minute. On the third verse, men, please, would you please sing unison only? I'm not going to play so high that all the tenors have to go to the hospital, I promise you. I'm not going to do that, so you're safe in my hands, trust me. And then on the last verse, could I beg you all, after I've gone a wee bit bananas, haven't a clue what I'm going to do, but that's the art of living on the razor's edge. I should get up to a suitably high key where you'll be standing on the pews by the end, of course. And would you please sing all unison on the last verse, okay, please? So, S-A-T-B, verse 1, ladies only, verse 2, unison, men only, verse 3, unison, and then all unison on verse 4. Great breaths, like so. Feel it in here. Do it with me once, just for the heck of it, right? Just to prove it's not a toupee. Go on, I just want to show you. Ready? 1, 2, 3, inhale. That was a very pessimistic sort of a breathing. Could we have an optimistic sort of breath, which is what this day and what this opening of this wonderful building represents? Ready? 1, 2, 3, inhale. Wow, wonderful. Now, you don't have to be so wonderfully broadcasting with it, you know, when you do it quietly. But big lungs like that, big breaths, and I think we'll be able to be all right. Here we go. Just follow me. F-sharp major and B-flat major in the same modulation. I don't know where I was going. Come back. Lord, too much coffee this morning. Right, you've been wonderful. You sang divinely. Give me just a tick if you don't mind. I will run up the aisle just like preacher does. And while I'm going up, he can come on and offer a benediction for this great day. Thank you for coming. I hope you enjoyed it. My pens are at the ready. I'm ready for you in the lobby. God bless. Thank you.